So averaging an average is bad, but why? In this video, I'll cover some illustrations as to why this makes for bad data that you should not be basing your decisions on. So grab a cup of coffee and let's chat. So I remember the first time that I was called out for doing this exact thing, averaging an average in a spreadsheet. Now the crazy thing is that I had been doing it for months and maybe even years in a business intelligence role. It definitely took me by surprise, and I was very embarrassed when I was called out. But as it turns out, the business leader that was using my reports for their presentation was even more embarrassed. They ended up in a meeting where the numbers just didn't jive. And if you aren't sure, your audience totally discounts everything you've already talked about and everything that you plan to talk about for the rest of that meeting if your numbers do not add up. The whole presentation just looks inaccurate. So we're going to cover why averages of averages are bad. Stick around to the end of the video and I will help you make sure that you don't have this happen to you if you're one of those business leaders trying to make sure that your data is solid. Average of averages make bad data because you don't take into account the different units. Okay, wait, that doesn't sound so simple. Stick with me here. Let's break that down a little bit more with an example. So your overall sales volume has changed and you want a fresh look at your sales by day per salesperson. And you're going to use this information to forecast for your next quarter. So you can tell there's a business impact to this average that you're going to be working towards. So let's say you have Ben and John. Those are your two salespeople. And we've got their daily numbers on a sales report here. John works under 2 weeks out of every month. So he made no sales and wasn't paid for those days that had no values. So if we average the sales per day for each of them, it looks like the duo makes about 6 sales per day that they work. This is wrong though, because Ben and John are weighted equally in this average. Ben worked more than John, but by averaging that average in this scenario, we're pretending that they both work the same number of days with the same impact. The true average for those days worked is 4.7. That's 1.3 less for each day, which would give the organization a bad forecast to work from. So there are instances where underlying records aren't available for you to go back and just get a fresh average to avoid it. But before we jump into what to do in those situations, I'd love it if you comment below to let me know what brought you this video. What kind of data issues are you dealing with? Just curious. So the best thing to do is go back to your data, get an average of the underlying data that you're looking at, solid. But if it's not feasible or possible, you're not stuck. Kind of like when I think of a median. So let's say you have median household income for the counties across your state and you don't have that underlying information. You could weight it against the population or you could label it as an average of the median. So you're being clear on what you're doing and that there is some ambiguity in that. But medians are a little bit different, right? But the best option if you can't go back to some underlying information would be to take a weighted average. So that's the problem. Whenever you're doing an average of an average, you're not taking the units into consideration, but by using a weighted average, you're overcoming that by considering those units. So if this information was helpful, give it a like. So this video on averages of averages are part of a series of videos that I'm putting together on the biggest data mistakes that I see across the board, across organizations, across teams. I see it more than I care to admit. And the funny thing is that I've been encountering these kind of errors for years. So our tools have gotten better, our methodologies are more widespread, but these problems persist. So check out the playlist here. I'll link it below and it's in the card here so that you can check out that playlist and avoid the same data pitfalls.